This is Radar for On the Radar Entertainment Blog, coming to another show of movie reviews and observations, number 138. The first movie I watched was called Belfast, and it had legendary actress Judi Dench. Jamie Dornan was in the movie, and Ciarán Hinds. I've seen them before the other two, and it was an hour and 37 minutes. I thought it was okay. It was very bland and boring, and people are going to think that I can't sit through, dramas. Dude, it was 90 minutes long. It's not have an issue with me sitting through dramas. But it was supposedly, this guy made a movie about his childhood life growing up, in the 1960s in Ireland, and being where the father works away and the mother's got to deal with all the things. Got the grandparents and the struggles of growing up with him and his brother and all this other stuff. And it was just like, it was okay. It was like short movie, not too horrible, not too bad. This really it is. It's not bad, it's not good. It says it was a winner Toronto Film Festival People's Choice Award. People are saying it's the best picture of the year, no doubt. 5 stars. And I'm just like, settle down. It was okay. Then I watched a horror film called Malignant, where I was super confused throughout the whole time. There was an introductory scene with like a psych ward and some weird, creepy creatures, and then it was like someone's normal life and stuff like that. And I'm just like, I don't get it. They got you on the weird, creepy thing that was like horrific and gives you nightmares and lots of blood and gore, so it's a good horror film. But as I mentioned, it was super confusing, like where this woman's from, her parents, this creature, what's going on, her real parent, her fake parent, I don't know. It was like all over the place, and these like cops who were looking into it. One's like this like supposed handsome cop, the other one's this like middle-aged black lady and stuff. And it seemed like when this creature was attacking everybody, they seemed to be they came out of it mostly okay in the beginning. And I'm just like, yeah, this thing is just ripping apart and tearing people. Like, it just makes it's not realistic. And of course, like a lot of horror films, pretty much everyone dies. And it's like, okay, whoop-de-doo. And it's an hour and 51 minutes of credits. So you're creeped out, disgusted, and there's lots of gore, so it gets the horror film elements. But then you're like, it's just a very confusing movie that's like all over the place. Like, I just didn't get it. It was just like, yes, you accomplished the horror part, but not the good movie part. Then I will say this, as I never watched Twilight, but pretty much I've seen every Kristen Stewart movie. I have a huge crush on her. Probably lots of men and women have crushes on her because she dates both. But whatever, that's not the point. This movie was also like an hour and 50 minutes, basically, almost 2 hours. And, I've seen some of the other actors in here, like Sally Hawkins and Timothy Spall and Sean Harris. I've seen a lot of these people. But basically, this was supposedly Princess Diana and her husband's marriage is off the rocks. They barely shown Prince Charles, so that's a stupid thing. And divorce is coming, and they got these Christmas festivities in the Queen's estate, and she doesn't really want to go there, so she does her own little thing. And like she maybe like embodied her with her style and her hair and her mannerisms, but she, an American actress pretending to be British, was a little bit too much. And they're saying this is certified fresh. Maybe because Kristen Stewart, like I've seen with some other films, like Jessica Chastain recently and Jennifer Hudson, doing these biopics of these people. This was more like they just like assumed what happened during this weekend and just went with it. And it was okay. It was not that great. The only reason to watch this movie, if you're a diehard fan of Kristen Stewart, and I am, but it's just like, yeah, not that good. It's not that it's a long movie or the subject matter is boring. It's just horribly written. I just don't get it. They could have written a better movie. The next movie I watched was called Duel, with Karen Gillan playing 2 roles and Aaron Paul. And Theo James was in it for briefly one moment, and this other guy I've seen before. So basically the premise is this. There's a world where, let's say you're going to die from cancer or whatever it is. In order to ease the pain of your loved ones, they make a copy of you. Now, they never really explain, does this copy live out a long natural life, or do they have a shelf life? Basically, they stay around you and learn everything about you so they can be you, blah, 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 blah. So that's the premise. But somehow this girl who has a strange relationship with her mother and a weird relationship with her boyfriend who travels a lot, and she somehow miraculously recovers. And in the case of that, you decommission the double. Well, the double goes, I want to live, so I'm going to freaking sue you. And the only way to solve this is in 1 year, you got to prepare for a duel to the death. And so the whole movie is about her and the double preparing for the thing, because the double fixes her relationship with her mother, has a better relationship with her boyfriend. The boyfriend goes, it's not you, I'm just not, even if, the double, was terminated, I wouldn't be with you, even though they look exactly the same. They're like the same person. That's the purpose of the movie. So that made no flipping sense. And then Aaron Paul, I wonder when he's coming in. Aaron Paul is the guy who trains her. So it was nice to see Aaron Paul, Breaking Bad, and a few other great movies like that he's been in. But like I said, the plot was interesting. So I felt like it was more like a thriller, suspenseful action adventure more than a science fiction. Because the only science fiction was, they have the technology to clone you. Outside of that, really not much else is scientific. It's more like a lot of talking and a lot of relationship drama. And that's pretty much it. And it was only an hour and like 30-something minutes. It wasn't bad. So I can say so far, this was the best plot. It was interesting enough to watch. Now Bruce Willis's movie, American Siege, with Timothy V. Murphy, who always plays a creepo, bad guy, lead henchman, whatever the case is. This time, he's not like a weird bad guy sort of thing. He's just like a dude who owns this small little town. So like the cops, the FBI, everyone is like, he can do whatever the heck he wants. He has his money and his arms and everything, drugs, whatever it is. And Bruce Willis is supposedly a washed-up sheriff who doesn't care anymore. The FBI tell him that you're no longer in charge of this hostage negotiation with this old black guy. And these people that are trying to do it, it's confusing because one dude just got out of prison, and then there was another dude, and then a woman, and they're holding this guy hostage because they want to know what happened to this other girl who they're friends with, and it's this whole, like, yippity-yappity-yappity with the people holding the guy hostage, and the sheriff and his deputy, and the deputy's father is the weird, creepy dude in the front, and all this other stuff, and there's another deputy, and it's just so much darn talking, and then there's like, well, we don't have FBI, we have my own private security crew in there, and I'm just going like, the woman that's one of the people holding the dude hostage is one of the worst acting job performances I've ever seen. Like, she was horrible. Like, again, barely 90 minutes, like an hour and 25, 26, 7 minutes. And Bruce Willis, I'm sorry to say this, I know you're battling some, you have an illness right now, but you have become Nicolas Cage. Countless movies, if you've watched any of my movie reviews since the pandemic, well, even before the pandemic, Bruce Willis has been in all these movies where they're either straight to DVD, they're streaming, they're video on demand, whatever it is, and they're just these cheesy action films, or even some could be science fiction, or they could be drama, but he's in it for like the beginning, and then he comes back in the end, or he's in the movie, but not all of it. Like in this movie, he would disappear for like 10, 20 minutes to resurface later. It's just like easy paycheck just to be in a bad movie. Like I understand the rest of these actors, but he's been in countless good movies. There's no purpose for him to have to waste his time making these movies. Then I watched The Artist's Wife, and I'll say this about Bruce Dern. He always plays the curmudgeon, like cantankerous man, whatever. The point is like a schmuck. He played bad guys in westerns back in the day. My father said growing up, he and his father, when they watched some of these shows or movies, were like, yeah, we just don't like Bruce Dern. Everyone loves his daughter. That's another story. There's Lena Olin. She was really the star of the movie, but they never showed in this movie what Bruce Dern was in the past when he was this either coming up as a famous artist or the present day as a famous artist. It was all about his battle with dementia while he's having it, losing his job, his temper, all this other stuff. There was never any moment in the movie where you're like, I feel bad that he lost all of this, because all we saw is him battling. If maybe they shown what it was, who he was before, then they sped it up and showed you what it is now, maybe you'd feel a little bit. But again, it's just Bruce Dern screaming and being nasty to everybody, swearing at them, being a horrible husband, being a horrible father, being a horrible grandfather, and all this other stuff. And then they just throw it in that his estranged daughter is lesbian. And she had a partner who just divorced her recently, and there's a custody battle for their kid. And they have this dude that watches the kid, and he's like an Indian who makes music. And then the wife, who's a Bruce Dern, which is a second wife, sleeps with him, and I could see that coming from a mile away because they were talking about art and they were flirting and having wine. It was okay. It was not that great. Again, barely 97 minutes, and I will say this. The best part of this movie was none of the actors, the plot, or anything else. The best thing was when the movie ended, they had this colorful post-credit scene of the characters. And I was like, listening, I'm like, wait, that sounds like Carole King. And it was a Carole King song that is not the most popular because, again, the radio stations won't play it. And that was the best part of the movie, was hear Carole King's song in the post-credit scenes of the movie. That's how bad this movie was, if that's the best thing I could tell you about it. Because if you're a Bruce Dern fanatic, you'll watch it, but I don't know how many people actually are. Then usually on Saturdays, I want to sit there down and watch a long movie because that's the best time to watch it. Fortunately, some weeks, I fall asleep multiple times, or the movie scratched. So I was going to watch another movie at a scratch. So the movie I watched was The Lost City with Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum. And I'll say that Channing Tatum from G.I. Joe, 21 Jump Street, etc. He's usually playing the dude who's like the serious action star, the guy who does all the stunts. He's the real hero, unlike, Jonah Hill's character. Blah, 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 blah. Obviously, Magic Mike. But for the most part, he's the guy that's believable as the former military guy or the action hero. And this one, he's just like a glorified actor who wants to be the action star. And Brad Pitt is the guy who was in the army, and he's more believable. So you have to take this movie as, it may be listed as action-adventure, but let's say it's a comedy. Because you got Daniel Radcliffe of Harry Potter and other movies playing the British bad guy, like Hugh Grant did in Paddington. Just in general, a lot of British actors play the bad guy, not just, James Bond is different because James Bond himself is British. But there's a lot of action movies where the bad guy, it could be like Mission Impossible, whatever, John Wick, you name it. And the bad guy is a British actor we've seen before. So, Daniel Radcliffe is just following the footsteps of British actors as they get into their 40s and 50s. Let's have him play the bad guy who has all the money and wants to, do something horrible to the world or whatever. And Sandra Bullock, she's done a lot of comedies, like, like The Proposal and things like that, where, she could be believable as, I'm a fish out of water. I may have written books and be this famous, fantasy writer about these islands and stuff. And Radcliffe wants to find this lost city. And so he kidnaps her, and Tatum thinks he can save the day. That was pretty funny. The woman that I watched in that movie recently with Ed Helms, where she was going to, be a surrogate. I've seen her before. She was in it for like 2 seconds. Bowen Yang was in it for a few seconds, and he's always funny because, he's a stand-up comedian, sketch comedy writer from SNL, so he's pretty funny. The woman playing the agent was unbelievable. Like, it was like, yeah, there's no way that you're going to demand the flight right away to a puddle ship, whatever, to like a small cargo ship, to getting like the military of whatever area to give you a ship to go save people. That wasn't realistic. That's why I got to take this as a comedy more than a serious action film, because there was a lot of action scenes and like guns and car scenes and stuff, but overall, it's a watchable movie. It's not inappropriate. It's PG-13. It's like an hour and 47 minutes. Then there's a credit scene, and then there's the credits again, like a minute or two later. So again, in the hour 40-minute range, not too long. But I feel like it definitely was the best movie I watched this week, because you can enjoy it because it's not serious. It's like funny and there's action. I think the second best movie I watched would be Duel, just based on the premise and just based on just clear acting. Kristen Stewart, like that's it. I would not watch Belfast unless you really want to watch the movie because people are saying it's good. Unless you're a horror fanatic, you would watch Malignant. If you're a Bruce Dern fanatic, you'd watch The Artist's Wife. And if you're a Bruce Willis fanatic, you watch American Seed. So I'm definitely saying Lost City, Duel, and Spencer would probably be the only three I would suggest to anybody. And even then, it was most likely Lost City is the only movie I would suggest to anybody. Again, thanks for listening to another show, Movie Reviews and Observations number 138. For On the Radar Tay Blog, I'm Radar. See you guys next time.